What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. New day, new video. Today we're going to be working on an almost 1100 horsepower Corvette Z06. We've got some really crazy stuff going on with this car. It is a track slash street car. I'll go into explaining that whole philosophy. But more importantly, what's going on with this vehicle and how we're going to work around and kind of address it so that we can get everything tip-top. All right. Yeah, I know. I said almost 1100 horsepower Corvette. Show us the motor. I'm on it. Let me flip the camera around. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, can we get back to what the video is actually about? Savages. So when I say track slash street car, for people that are watching the video, they may not necessarily know what I'm saying. So give me just a second to kind of explain that. Essentially, there is a culture out there in the automotive world of people that will buy a relatively fast car from the factory. In this particular case, it is a Corvette Z06. They come from the factory pretty damn quick. They will then proceed to take it to a speed shop and have that vehicle modified to the point where they can put it on a racetrack. Now you have different forms of racing. You're going to go, street course, which is the windy roads. You have time attack stuff that's usually associated with that. And then you have the straight line racers. Straight line racers is this car. It goes from point A to point B in a straight line as fast as it possibly can. And these people put, obscene amounts of money into these cars. You could, and I have plenty of clients like this, that will go buy a $50,000 Corvette used and put $50,000 worth of motor work into them just so they can go down this line as fast as they possibly can. To each is their own, but with that comes track abuse. Racetracks are not, necessarily like normal roads. They're extremely aggressive and brutal on paint systems, on the actual body of the vehicle. I mean, you name it. There's a slew of things that can happen to the outside of your vehicle and your motor while racing vehicles. And just to add to the crazy, these people usually, because the back end of the track slash street car is street car, these people love to show off their vehicle, as they should. It's a huge investment and something that they're very proud of, and it usually takes a long time to be able to make these things. They'll take them to car shows. They'll drive them on the street because it's that perfect balance between an absolute race car and, I wouldn't say daily driver, but there are people crazy enough to daily drive these things. They want their paint to look great. Well, the track doesn't. So where do we find this balance? And that's the conundrum. That is the thing that just doesn't make sense. We'll go into this particular vehicle. I'll give you a couple really good examples as to what I'm talking about. And then we'll go through certain ways that we're going to address that. Today, I'm going to talk about the SIC discs and how they're going to help me get through this process and enhance the overall visual aesthetics of this vehicle. We'll get the client extremely happy, and you're along for the ride. All right, first off, we've got some lovely rotary swirls here. Very common. Usually these aftermarket parts are going to go to a body shop or maybe have come from a facility that doesn't really want to focus on the finished product, if you will. So you're going to get, rotary swirls, and that's that prism pattern that you see when I move the light around. If you're looking around the actual light, you can see the reflection from those scratches. They are scratches, so rotary swirls, when you hear people There you go, it's a little bit better. When you hear people say rotary swirl, and it's in a circular formation, you're going to essentially see that prism pattern, I think is what a lot of times people will say, try to identify it. It's just a different form of communication and being able to identify a defect. They're coming from a polisher, a rotary polisher, spinning in one direction. So they're all in one consistent formation. What we don't understand is in the surface of your paint, that's actually just a very fine circular scratch. There's no real difference there. Now, if they tilt that polisher on its side and they don't know what they're doing, they could make that scratch deeper, which would have inconsistencies in the signature itself or the rotary swirl. Additionally, what makes this even more challenging to address is that that is a carbon fiber or carbon composite hood. Very, very, very expensive, very finicky and quasi-volatile. And the reason being is that it doesn't conduct heat normally like sheet metal, very old sheet metal. When you're polishing in that specific area with sheet metal, it'll disperse across the panel, or at least in a distance across the panel. With composite stuff, like the carbon fiber hood here, it stays centered in a very small working space, which means that if you're not paying attention, the risk or the ability to burn through the paint is that much higher. Let's keep going, shall we? The fender. You put the light on it, you're gonna have a lot of swirls. Now, these particular defects, if I can get the camera to kind of focus, are in almost like a linear pattern. Sometimes you'll see them in a swooping pattern, and that's primarily coming from wash-induced or drying-induced marring. That's how we define these particular defects. And if you see, if I can get the camera to kind of focus, there you go. See them in like a circular kind of sweeping motion. That's usually coming from somebody doing this with their hand. These could be wash-induced signatures, they could be dry-induced signatures, and that's just coming from somebody, washing the car or drying the car and rubbing on it in this kind of formation or pattern. It could, because of the caliper of this particular vehicle, also be dry humping marks. Who knows? So the swirling pattern that we just saw is all over the vehicle. Let's be rest assured. It's a GM gloss black vehicle. It's going to carry that type of stuff. It just comes with the territory. Black is, in my humble opinion, one of the best looking colors when it's dialed in, but additionally probably one of the absolute worst colors to try to keep pristine and nice. So take that into account if you own a gloss black vehicle. Understand that you only have so much paint to work with, and if you always want it to be flawless, then you've got a couple options here. You're going to either need to be extremely diligent with your process in washing it or having it washed and maintained, or you're going to have to set some sort of healthy regimen on having your paint addressed and not aiming for every defect that needs to go kind of philosophy. You have to essentially understand that you're going to have to deal with perfection and maybe being like right here, so that your paint system has a long healthy life and then you don't have a bunch of burn spots all over your vehicle. Moving on. This is where it gets really cute. All right, so don't mind the extension cord coming out of the door. The client actually told me to do that. It's hooked up to a trickle charger because it's a race car, and little quirky fun things like that come with race cars. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but I'm gonna try anyway. This door has been repainted, and if I run it, let's lift this up a little bit. If I get close enough, you might be able to see the texture in this, and I'll try to grab it with maybe like a different form of video, so you can actually see a little bit better. If you're looking at the reflection of the doors behind us, the light that's coming through, you may not necessarily be able to have or see clearly. The reflective quality isn't coming back. It looks a little hazed or maybe distorted. And the reason is because this door has actually been repainted at some point in time. If I scroll over here, you can see the orange peel, but like a higher gloss in this panel. And that's usually what GM looks like. So right in this area, if you're looking, you can see the texture, but it's got a higher reflective quality as opposed to this. And what we're looking at right now, oddly enough, is texture, just like this panel. But this texture is very, very small and it's shrunk in. And what we call this in the industry is dieback. It is essentially how do I say this? It's a byproduct of the paint that they used and the way that they painted the car and how it cured. And the clear coat's essentially dying back. It's shrinking back. Sometimes they call it shrink back, but that's not necessarily what we're looking at here. Shrink back has to do with something else, which will be covered in a different video. Dieback is going to be this very kind of like smaller textured appearance in the clear coat, as opposed to this larger orange peel. I call it orange peel because if you kind of look in the reflection of the glass right here where this black squiggly line is, it looks like the surface of an orange. This does not. It's very small and it's hazy. It's not giving a good reflective quality. So this is going to be something that's very interesting because that's a composite panel. It's going to conduct heat very similar to the way that the hood's going to, and it's on a door. But the way to get it to look better is by sanding it. You're going to see this stuff on more than just repainted panels. This type of stuff is actually coming out in OEM manufactured vehicles, very, very expensive ones. If you've ever seen the hood on a Dodge Charger or Challenger, you will more than likely see dieback. And again, you got to ask, why would the rest of the vehicle have normal orange peel and the hood or the roof or maybe even the trunk lid have dieback? I don't know. Write a very strongly worded email to Dodge or any of the other OEM manufacturers that have this if you own the vehicle and now you know what you're looking at, and demand answers. I would love to know. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, got our little educational value there, and to not make this video just obscenely long, how do I plan on attacking this? Well, you guessed it, it's going to be the SIC sanding discs. This is where you got to have a discerning taste, okay? Let's calculate the factors that we've just discussed. We have composite body, we have aftermarket paint, and we have aftermarket paint that's seemingly going to be a bit of a challenge to address, and it's not going to happen by pummeling it with either a rotary polisher, a direct-driven polisher, or a DA machine. You need to take the surface down just a little bit, and that's why I'm going with the SIC discs. But because of the factors that we're already looking at, I'm going to omit 1500 grit. I'm going to play it safe on this one. I don't know how much material I'm actually working with in this regard, and the way that these are designed, again, is to be able to just essentially address defects, surface level stuff. These aren't made to level texture like traditional sandpaper. So we're reducing the risk just by using these. I'm going to do a test spot on the door. You guys are coming with me, and we've got the before and after pictures, the footage. I'm going to let you decide whether it worked or not. We're going to go through this, embark on this journey together. And if I fail epically, I'm still going to video it so that you guys can all see and in turn laugh at me in the comforts of your own home. Let's do it. Well, I got a nice little cushy microfiber towel to support the cord, because if I'm going to be running a machine that slight little vibration will leave more signatures in the finish for me to get out later. So I'm just gonna go ahead and circumvent that. I'm gonna start with 2000. Now I'm gonna do this dry just to see what the paint type responds to. If it takes, cool, we'll just keep it moving. If it doesn't, another added incentive to the SIC discs is that they are actually a true hybrid. So comparatively speaking to other brands that are global juggernauts, and I love them, use them, support them, nothing bad being said here. These particular discs have the ability to go from wet to dry, all right? Some of the larger brands that are widely used all around the world, it's either really, really, really well performing wet, or it performs really, really well dry. And that's it. It doesn't do both. Traditional dry sanding, silicon carbides are fantastic dry. But if you put water on it, it completely craps the bed. Some silicon carbide Trizac formulations are phenomenal wet. But if you put it to paint dry, it's rubbish. This one, we can go back and forth. It don't matter. I have found that these are, in my opinion, a little bit more robust dry, but you know, I can't quantify that on every paint system. So I'm gonna rely on you guys, if you use these, to give me that feedback. From what I've found, it leans just a little bit more into dry. It could just be because it's dry. I don't know. But the performance does lean a little bit more. And when I say that, I'm marginally 2%, 3%. I don't. Why are you asking me for a percentage? So I'm going to wrap it around my block. Remember, if you've watched the other videos, I'm always a massive advocate on consistency. When you're sanding, if you do this with your fingers, and I don't care how long you've been doing this, but like when you go to wipe on a car, even with a towel, your fingers are not always consistent. They're going to do this. And the reason is because you're not thinking about that. You're moving your damn hand or your arm around. So you have a better potential risk of leaving a deeper stroke, especially when it's followed up or being used with an abrasive like that. So a good way to circumvent that is to just use a block, and it promotes that consistency. When you wrap it around it, that's the only piece that's touching the surface of the vehicle. If it doesn't have that play and that give, besides maybe like a little bit of this squishy foam, you're gonna have a lot more consistent leveling ability. Why that's important? We're looking for reflective quality. We've already noticed that the clear coat isn't giving us that full reflective quality that we can see in other areas, even though they're heavily textured, and this isn't necessarily. Why is that important, or how does that play? Consistency. Consistency is always going to give you that. When you're using a rotary polisher as opposed to a DA, when you're using hand sanding opposed to DA sanding, I mean, there's a whole spectrum there. We're going to go over that in a bunch of other episodes, but for now, block promotes consistency. What did I say? We're going to do a dry first? Let's do a dry. So I've already got a couple like deeper scratches here. It's a win-win situation. I picked this as my my test area, if you will. And again, I'm going in with the 2000 grit. You see that? Now you can. 2000 grit sandpaper, and I'm just gonna kind of lightly go in. Let's see what it does. Immediately getting a bite. Cool. I'm not gonna put a lot of pressure down. It's not about hammering this thing. It's about nice and easy, baby. You know, just address the surface. And that's what these are designed to do. So I'm gonna make a small little patch right here. I am gonna be mindful of this contour line. I'm not going to hammer on that. I'm just gonna kind of stay in this particular area. Got a little residue on there. I recommend that you use a towel. Don't try this at home. You're gonna come home and your wife's gonna be like, "What'd you get into?" Grab a towel. just like that. Easy peasy with a squeezy. Look, I'm trying to hold back. I want to sand this whole damn car, all right? So I really appreciate you watching this and bearing with me and watching this struggle, because keeping it just right here for you guys is like nails on a chalkboard for me. But it's about learning, and it's about witnessing the power of the SIC discs. We're just sanding and correcting textures and learning in the process. All right, so we have uniformity. I'm gonna flip the camera around real quick so that you can see what the 2000 grit looks like and what the ideal uniform sanding pattern looks like, so that if you're going to sand cars, or even somebody else sanded your car, you know what to look for. You know what to see. You go back to this video. I want this, or this is what we need to be doing. Got it? Cool. I'll be right back. There you go. The signature is extremely consistent. That's my oily fingerprint mark. Super slick, super smooth. When you go and you kind of see the light coming through, the signature is very consistent. You're not going to see a bunch of this, or you're not going to see the gloss black poking through in this particular area. It's all been leveled consistently. That's essentially what you're looking for right there. All right, on to 3000. But wait a minute. You just said that these aren't going to level texture like other sanding discs, and you're taking defects out and leveling texture. That doesn't make sense. This is a crock of phooey. Well, what I said is these do not reduce texture like traditional sandpaper. Traditional sandpaper being aluminum oxide based, or some silicon carbides. And it's due to the way that this disc is put together. In regards to this vehicle, the texture that we're removing is so minimal that they actually do have an effect. And it's so insignificant that it actually addressed the problem that we have without taking too much material. And that was more important when it came to that vehicle because of the composition of the panel and the paint sitting on it. This was a better judgment call using the tools that I have at my discretion to be able to address the problem efficiently. Next question. We're back. And this time, I brought my little friend, 3000 grit. This is gonna be your follow-up. So my initial primary pass, 2000 grit. I know, again, it's weird, sandpaper and the way that they gauge the grits. I'm gonna go to 3000 grit to go lower, or to refine the signature that I've made with 2000. 2000, 3000, that seemingly is like we're going up. But again, in the sandpaper world, that means a finer grit. I didn't make this up, I don't know. I'm gonna wrap it around my block again, and I'm gonna go over this area. I'm gonna go over this area and then some. And what that's called, that's an old school trick. It's called feathering out. And essentially what that means is, you know, if I were to have just been addressing this one area, let's just say getting a scratch out, I'm gonna feather out of that so that there's a transition to your eye. If I were to have leveled the texture with a traditional sandpaper, there'd be like this slick spot right here as opposed to over here or over there. And that, to some people that have a trained eye, oh, what is that? You know, there's no coming back from that. You can take material off, but you can't really put it back on unless you're a painter, and I'm not a painter. So I'm gonna feather out a little bit just to be courteous. That's what it is. It's a sanding courtesy. You're welcome. Let's go over the 3000, let's polish it out, and let's get an idea of what we're doing, what it's gonna look like. We might fail, I might blow through this door, who knows? So I'm gonna go in a different direction. My last video, you know, I talked about people asking me about cross hatching, and I said I really didn't, you know, really care as long as it was consistent. And to promote that consistency, I'm cross-hatching on this panel the same way I did that last panel in that video you watched. And if you didn't watch that video, go watch the video, dude. Subscribe and ring the bell while you're there. Yeah, me. Let me wipe this off real quick. Not on my sleeve. And I'm gonna pick up where I left off. Again, on my last video, I started here and left like the tail end of the sanding signature. And then when I come in this way, I'm going to basically cross over that subtly, and that kind of brings the uniformity together. So that's what I'm doing now. Again, not pressing hard, just letting the paper do its thing. And you saw me change the direction of the block when I was coming back this way, and that's because I'm watching that contour line like I talked about. It's not something that I want to grind on. So I'm just kind of, again, another sanding courtesy, if you will. Just trying to stay above that line, kind of keep things chill for this particular video. We're just warming up. That's good. Super consistent. This is just going to be an even more refined looking signature on the panel to what I showed you earlier with the 2000 grit. And now we're ready to polish, and we get to do kind of like a comparison, if you will. And I'll try to get that as much as I can on video. I know that this is like super subtle. It's kind of hard to see maybe. I mean, luckily I film in 4K. So you guys have a better odds of being able to see what I'm doing, right? Right. All right. I'm gonna need the polisher. Enough's enough. You guys have waited this long. Let's go ahead and see if this is actually gonna work, and then gauge how much work I have left to do. I'm back. All right, so I grabbed my little Flex Compact. This is a rotary polisher. If you don't own this, this is the entire size of this vehicle. It is a vessel of paint correction. This is the size of this apparatus, this machine. The reason that I really like this, the Compact 3, is I guess because I have gorilla mittens, a little bit larger than normal. It gives me the ability to have a little bit more control. I'm gonna put what are these things called? A silk infused pad, or this is a wool pad, but it's not traditional wool. And I'm going to just put a little bit of compound here. We're gonna make a couple working passes, finish it down, and that way we can see if we got the texture where we think it's sufficient, and will at least bring a better aesthetically pleasing vibe to the vehicle, to the track car that gets shown every once in a while, that has almost 1100 horsepower. So a little bit of compound makes the medicine go down. That rock. Super cool to touch. I don't know if my microphone's picking that up. I had an audio issue last time, so I'm like super, like ultra hypersensitive to whether you can hear me or not. And when I edit all of this, hopefully you can, because I don't want to film it again. I'm going to put a little bit more on there, just kind of like as a secondary measure. I don't want the compound drying up. And remember, this is a composite panel, so all that heat is right there. That's part of the reason why I used a rotary, is to be able to dissipate heat. Yes, it's wool. Yes, it's a rotary. It's supposed to be this like just monstrous destroyer of clear or paint. And in actuality, if you know how to use this thing, it is probably one of the most effective tools and provides an immense amount of value at doing advanced paint correction stuff without putting yourself into potential compromise of the finish that you're working on. So learn how to use these. They're fantastic. And I'm just gonna work this just a little bit more. I'll pick up my hand speed. That way I'm just getting a nice, even, consistent cut, but I'm not putting a ton of strain on this clear piece. It's very, very, very important. I'm also not swelling the paint, which is something that we'll cover later on. I mean, it has to do with heat on the surface from what you're doing. Yeah, I think we got a winner. I mean, it's not perfect, okay? But it sure looks better. I'm going to grab my mid step. When I'm cutting, I like to bring it down to a mid-level before I start my finishing work. And that's just to, again, promote consistency, but like in a different way, as opposed to the sanding consistency using the block. We're promoting polish consistency. Polishers can leave signatures as well. Remember the rotary swirl thing? So if I have a deeper swirl, I want to create a mid-step to level that out, which allows my finish to, one, not only be more effective, but two, the final product to be chef's kiss. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Appreciate you guys bearing with me on this one. Hopefully the final results are something that you enjoy. All right, same machine, different pad, it's a microfiber pad, a little bit shorter of a nap on the fiber, a little bit more conducive with mid-step. It appears as though I've taken the cap off of this machine somehow. Mid-step formula, one of my go-tos, Obergsoll. This product, and it says medium polish. See that on the bottle? This stuff, it's lightning in a jar. One of our staple products here at Reds. Never disappoints. If you're looking for a polish, whether you're DIY or a pro, this product will absolutely work for you. I'm plugging over here, but so again, same kind of routine. Put a little on the panel. Now I'm going to lower my speed a little bit. I'm still going to have that quick hand movement because remember, composite panel. We're going to go through the mid step. I'll finish it down. We'll go ahead and look at the reflective quality differences here. And hopefully you're pleased. Hopefully I don't blow through this door in the process. Super light, no downward pressure at all. I'm just starting to kind of do it spin. Walk along that little ridge real quick. And once I see the product start to kind of become translucent, with the exception of a couple of these lines, I'm done. That's it. Literally that fast on the mid step. Now we're going to go into the finish. And then we get to check the results. DA machine, 3-inch Rupus. This is a Lake Country black HDO finishing pad. I like this pad when I'm doing finishing. It's certainly not the only one that I use, but it's got, if I can see, this little denser foam interface, and then this is like the super squish. Yeah, it's really, really, really good. Finishing? Yeah, I just checked to see if my microphone was on for you guys. So sensitive about that. I'm gonna put a little finishing polish on this and make sure that there's no boogers from the finish polish being dried on the tip of the bottle, and there are. So I'm going to extract those. You can see that. Can you focus? See that? So it's just like a, you know, a little bit more dried finish polish on there. I am super discerning about finishing, especially in kind of like a high risk situation. So I always check my pads, I always check my towels, I always check for polish boogers, whatever. All right, don't judge me. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this one on. I'm gonna finish it out, and then we're gonna flip the camera around.
You'll notice my hand speed is a little bit slower. You know, just kind of like letting the pad and the final part do great. Just to give me that clean.
I'm gonna wipe this off. I'm gonna flip the camera around and we're gonna see where we're at. I'll be right back. All right, so here you go. This is what we were working with. And if you're looking at the door, the reflection of the rear door behind me, you can actually see the dieback. So I'm using my finger here so that you can get a better idea of the texture. And then that's where we are now. Way better reflective quality. There. There. Just like that, SIC discs save the day. Oh, that was relatively painless. It's a win. Understand that this isn't always going to be an end-all be-all, but when you see something like this, and hopefully you see it well in the video that I've given you, you now know how to address it. And better yet, you have a product option that you can rely on, that you actually got to see an entire working video of how to do this, making educated guesses so you don't get yourself into a serious problem, and getting a better final result. If you like what you watched today, make sure to throw a comment in there. Tell me something that you want me to address. Give me a good idea on a video to make. I want to actually make content for you guys, not just to make content. Let's all win in this one. Subscribe, ring the bell. You get notified every time I drop a new episode. And if you really like watching these things, thank you. It helps the channel out. But now that we're back to this, you see what I had to do. Relatively painless procedure. Yes, there's a couple things involved in that, but this is advanced paint correction. This is how you're going to get finishes to really, really, really stand out and be the absolute best representation of not only you, but the vehicle and the paint system. Yeah. And with that being said, I'm going to need you to get the hell out of here because I have a whole door that I have to do along with the rest of the car. Thanks for watching.